I was so sick of being stuck, so I did something I never thought I would do. I hired an executive coach. Follow along with me as I team up with Tarik, a personalized executive coach for rising leaders. I'm going to talk about my fears, my anxieties, and what's holding me back. And hey, maybe we'll get unstuck together.
As always, over to you to start for today.
I've always been a big believer that whenever you try to make changes in life, forces outside of your control will do everything possible to keep you from doing that. And the last 2 weeks have been absolute proof that I believe I am absolutely correct. To say the last 2 weeks were speed bumpy would be an understatement. However, it is really nice to be able to sit here and define the last 2 weeks as speed bumpy instead of roadblocky or dead endy or whatever disastrous phrase that we might have said however many weeks ago that it was, 10 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. Has it been that long? Man.
6 weeks, man.
6 weeks?
It's been only 6 weeks.
We have jam-packed so much into it that it feels like time is expanding. As tough it has been, feel anchored in a lot of the techniques and processes that we have talked about, how we put in place. While I feel the stress and the pressure of everything, I don't feel the spiraling and out of control.
Amazing. Okay. Happy to hear about. Look, this is where, like I told you a couple weeks ago, like, hey, we're only a few weeks into this thing. Like, a big part of this is like we're going to unlock stuff, but it's also about how do we make it stick. And sometimes time and more reps is just what helps things stick, right? And now we have more evidence and more speed bumps, and it's just building this database in our head that like what we're landing on is sticking because you're using it in real life in your business the past few weeks to deal with speed bumps.
I would love to explore today some of the this weird phenomenon that I am experiencing. And I don't think I'm alone in this, but I had 2 meetings this week where people were seeking my advice on video and marketing and, expanding their business and such. And in the course of just these lunch meetings, over an hour and a sandwich, they would ask me a question and boom, 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 rattle off strategy and implementation and advice and help and everything within their context, left with good next steps and everything like that. And in both of those situations, I went out and I sat in my car for like 30 minutes trying to figure out why I can't do the same thing for myself. I find it over and over again, whenever the context is outside of me, I'm super able to provide what that person is looking for. Flip the script, I seem extremely unable to do it for myself and my business. So I would love to try to explore some of that today if you are game.
Definitely game. I want to make sure I heard you. Conversations that when it's outside your context, you're feeling able to rip off the advice of like video strategy, marketing, whatever they're asking for. Next steps are clear. Sounds like the mind is pretty clear. But then when your question of like, why is it harder for you to do that when it's your own context? Like, what's the gap? And so before we dive into this, when you're talking about this feeling of like, can't trust the decisions I want to make for myself, are there any trends on like the types of decisions, whether it's like certain functions of your business, any patterns or trends, wondering how specific we then take our discussion?
Let me try to explain what I'm getting at because I feel a little cloudy on it and I only have a piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that I've never done before that I feel confident that I can do. For instance, like I'm setting up some back end stuff on my website and with customer portals and all this things. I've wanted to do this forever, and I've never done it before. It's weird. I could probably break something, but I have no issues in just figuring out and doing it. There are certain things like go-to-market strategies and you know, some of the sales stuff that I've never done before, but I don't have that same, I can do it, I can figure it out. And as I'm talking, I'm wondering, I do not know if this is correct, but I'm going to throw it out there. I am wondering if it has to do with the difference between things that have to deal with people and things that have to deal with the technical side of stuff. I'm wondering if a lot of my hesitation has to deal with things that will ultimately mean interfacing with people instead of interfacing with technology and computers and those things.
Shall we dive in and then see and explore maybe a bit around like what's happening in those moments, what your brain's telling you, and then maybe we keep this channel open of like what are the trends of when this seems to be happening? Because then we can start
Sure.
designing stuff and apply it to specific situations too. Tell me more about in these moments, what feels like the barrier? What's your brain saying in these moments?
Way too much. We've talked about the the back and forth dialogue. And this time it seems like there's two or three other opinions that get thrown around in there too. The opinion of the, I'll call it the opinion of the internet, so where you're going and you're scrolling LinkedIn and you say, "Oh, I really like that. Oh, okay, I like this solution. Oh, I really like that solution." That voice gets added into mix. The extrovert introvert voice always gets in there, and then there's an underlying tone of the enormity of growing, or the enormity of building a system that has to be continually maintained versus a task or a workflow that sets it and forgets it. Like when the website refresh is done, it's done until it needs done again. When the customer portal is done, it is done until a refresh is needed. But I think maybe some of my hesitancies around some of these sales and GDM strategies and stuff is the knowing that it needs to continually be watered and continually be refreshed, and not knowing if I have the actual bandwidth to do that. Does that track or make any type of sense at all?
I'm tracking. I'm
Okay.
tracking on it. So check mark there. The interesting thing here, Josh, and where I don't really have an answer yet, this could be anything, right? It could no meaning like it very well could be about like the building systems that need to be maintained versus setting it and forgetting it, and that could be a bandwidth thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could very well be a dealing with people versus dealing with technical and more of a comfort thing. You've told me about like
Yeah.
introvert and I don't know if
Yeah.
that's even part of it, right? It could
Yep.
be that. It could also be it being easier to dish out advice and harder to take it for ourselves, like what you started with today.
Mm-hmm.
And full disclosure, my pre-video this morning, I was talking about the last session and the sales thing and tying to values because I saw the weight of the ickiness around that topic, and so I don't mean to bring it up back, but it, I wouldn't be surprised if it even is tied to some values thing too. And so part one is I'm tracking. Part two is this is a hard one for me to say. Oh yeah, hey, maybe it's that because
Mm-hmm.
it could be one of 4 or 5 things, and that's why I'm thinking like let's keep. I'll
Yeah.
get your reaction to that because it could be any of it.
It could be all like the root of it could be like all of these things. Like this one seems super intertwined, where we've been able to kind of maybe have one or two threads. This one seems tied to so much of the other stuff that we have been talking about over the course of the last 5 sessions. And perhaps that's also why it's been one of the hardest things for me to do in the life of the business, because it is all of this stuff. But from my side, it's really weird because I think I can identify all of those pieces, and I desperately want something to unify all of those pieces, but I'm not sure there is something to unify all of those pieces.
If you were guaranteed to get this all like fully dialed in, optimized, you're operating exactly as you want to be operating, and you call me a few weeks from now and you say that session 6 thing, like eventually we got it sorted and we're good. Just tell me about how that version of you is operating when you don't have the heaviness of this.
Great question. I think the proof of that would be I could sit down in 2 weeks and say, I have made a decision on a GTM strategy that I want to implement. In 2 weeks, if all of this is gone, I would be able to definitively say, I have made this decision to do this, and I am attempting to implement this one thing. Success, as is with a lot of these things in our sessions, naming it and shrinking, being able to shrink it down.
You've said GTM 3 or 4 times today.
It's the thing that's been on my mind the most over the last couple of weeks, and so it's like a real practical thing that I'm legitimately going through right now. It's legitimately the thing that I want to leave 2025 with for the first time in the history of the business.
You want to keep that as our example maybe for the next bit and see if using an example helps find broader patterns? Okay, cool. And so 2 weeks from now, you're calling me saying, okay, I've made a decision on GTM and I'm going to implement or try something. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In order for that to happen, what do you want to land with on this session as a step forward?
In this session, I would like to try to find a way to identify the real problem from the predominant voice that is the major hangup. Maybe it's this function of this voice of the overwhelming need for bandwidth that I don't have, and trying to understand what it's really trying to say. If I can learn how to communicate with that, maybe that'll be easier to find next steps.
If you somehow, hypothetically, magically found 10 hours in a week, however that happened, and it had no impact on your current operations, everything's running, but there was 10, 15 hours in a week that opened up, what impact does that free time have on you in how you think about doing some of these things that feel heavy, like GTM?
I'd certainly have the time, but I would also immediately I'm smacking into those other bolts that we're talking about. Like, I've got more time to research and tinker, maybe, tinker the strategies and, implement and, try to find it. But, I'm still like, even as you say that, it's like immediately some of those other bolts begin to come up.
What does that say to you then about the likelihood that this is about bandwidth?
I would say that it's a piece, but it's not the piece. The last bolt that would be able to be taken off. Because you're right, there are ways to buy back time and find time. Every one of us will prioritize what is actually important to us on the fundamental level. I guess I have to figure out why I know that this GTM strategy is important, but why is it not important enough to make it work? And why can I over prioritize other things?
So if we come up a level for a sec, just to look at where we're at. Earlier when you said there was a few voices and one of them was like, oh, I want to pay someone to just take this off my plate. Circling back to this now, like I'm just wondering, maybe this isn't purely about freeing up time, right? It might not be about just offloading stuff, because as you're saying, like even if I had 10 hours a week, the other stuff is still there, right? And that's why I've hesitated to just go into the question of, hey, Josh, what can we do to free up 10 hours a week? Because I have a feeling that that's not going to be the answer.
You know me enough to know that I am very like, if I can understand the big overarching theoretical thing of it all, then application and stuff can definitely follow. And I think maybe the biggest thing that I'm missing is the big theoretical overview, explain in a way that I can apply my value system to, right? So it's just
Yes.
like nuts and bolts, nuts and bolts, nuts and bolts, nuts and bolts. Da 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 da. This piece, this piece, this piece, this piece, this piece. Okay, cool. Those pieces are fine. What's what's the quintessence, right? That the Greek thing where there were four essences of life, but the fifth essence is what tied everything together. I'm searching for the quintessence of what a GTM strategy would mean for me, and are all the pieces are the pieces, but I can't get it tied together, and I can't understand it, and therefore it's like it
Mm-hmm.
remains a mystery shrouded in an enigma and all those, all that stuff. Like when it comes to GTM, the experience, the swath of my experience is all of the people selling the strategies and the systems and everything else, and it's all just solutions to buy, which means that they're great. They're doing their job to sell their product. Love it. The thing that I need is the why behind it. I need the why, and I can't find the why. And if without that why, then I can't apply it to the values, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work for what we do because we are very, very why driven. Like when we go to the customer, why do you want to do this? Why is your message even important? Like why? Like customer portal. Why do I need a customer portable? This is the reason why. Why do I need a website? This is the reason why. Why do we do this? Why do we do that? All of those things are why. When it comes to the GTM strategy, I have all the hows, zero of the why, and it's a block. I can't get past that because I can't grasp anything on that why.
Well, and hey, that's a great thing for us to note, right? Like even for
Sure.
you going forward, there's going to be other areas in your business and your life where like you might be faced with a bunch of information on the how, and
Mm-hmm.
it might be just really useful for us to know in our minds, hey, when we're thrown with a bunch of how stuff, we got to make sure that we can level up and ask the why question and feel clear there. Whether we're talking GTM, whether we're talking about other areas, like that's a good thing for us to know going forward. So the why is really important. Two questions, and maybe a little rapid fire. First one, we've talked GTM strategy. You
Mm-hmm.
came in telling me about there's a bunch of areas where it feels heavy. We took GTM as the example. Based on the track we're going down right now, does this seem to track with the other examples too? This whole why versus how piece?
Initially, yes, and I'm just trying to run
Cool. Take your
like a
time. Yeah, yeah.
verification, but it feels that way. Yes, knowing the why helps me prioritize what's important. Without the why, I have a hard time prioritizing. And I know that one is very theoretical and one is very practical, but to me, those two things get tied together. If you were to say, Josh, put a schedule out in front of you, all the things that you know the why behind, and I need you to put them on your calendar in order of what's important. Cool. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, Josh, I need you to do the same thing with all the things that you don't quite have the understand why, but you know that they're important, and put those in the calendar. Where do they go? Maybe that gives me a insight into the bandwidth issue because I don't understand the why and I can't prioritize it. The bandwidth required for it is up in the air, and I can't adequately plan for how much bandwidth I need. All the other why things, I know how much bandwidth it takes, I know where to prioritize it, all these things, I can put it in there, cool. But if I don't understand the why behind things, then I'm going to be less likely to delegate the bandwidth resources to do it. And that leads to the block of not being able to put them in a calendar, make the decisions, pick the strategy, and tie with it.
Is that checking out for you?
It is. That's what checks out, yes.
That sounds like it ties together a bunch of pieces that we didn't really know how they tied together 25
Yes.
minutes ago. Okay.
Yes.
So then hypothetically, in our last 10 minutes, if we were to design a system that gets you the best chances at uncovering the whys behind these areas, what impact does that have on the rest of the flow?
Then the stuff gets on the calendar, and then we get to chip away at the process. Then it's the let's try it. Let's implement this here. Let's put this in and play with it and refine it here and refine it there. Where I feel like I feel like I'm working backwards. It's like, let's find a thing, retrofit it to your time, and then maybe we'll discover the why it's important later. So it's almost like when it comes to these things, I'm working very counterintuitively than I've done everything else in my business, which is probably why it always gets pushed away, and it gets pushed off, and it gets pushed off, and it gets pushed off.
I want to land on just your key insights that you've taken out and a couple actions here.
Sure.
What stands out from the past hour?
Being able to identify and say out loud how important the why is to prioritize things, to help prioritize actions, is good. And maybe that will allow me to improve and make my current planning even more efficient. So I see a benefit to that, not just from conquering the unknown bad stuff, but to making the good stuff even better.
Okay. And any actions you want to take going forward in our last minute?
I need to sit down and spend time maybe really trying to define why GTM is important for me outside of a just get more customers. Because the reptile side of the brain is you need more customers so your business survives. Yes, I know, I get that. Got done. But I need to better define the why too. So maybe when I see it, I can recognize it. And that could, I think that's going to be a key part in getting past this hurdle.
Okay. How will you hold yourself accountable to doing that part, defining the why? Now you're back. You're back.
Test 1, 2.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Man.
An hour.
I'm going to need an hour to start this week.
Okay.
And then I'm also going to do an hour next week. I'm going to dedicate 2 hours to digging through this problem, and hopefully I can report back some of the things that I found.
Cool. Okay. I know you got to go. I appreciate you. Call me later if you want. We can just chat on the phone and close out if you want.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will have to do make sure that I've got all this stuff straight. So I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you for today. Once again, great session. We always get somewhere.
We always get somewhere. All right. Great stuff, Josh. We'll talk to you soon, yeah?
Yep.
All right.
See ya.
Cheers.